I was working the graveyard shift as a paramedic in my small town. It was just a few weeks ago. I thought I knew this place well. The streets were dark and quiet, lit only by the yellow glow of streetlights. I was ready for a normal night. Then we got a call. An old house on the town's edge. I parked the ambulance and felt a chill. My partner and I got out and stepped onto the creaky front porch. I hesitated for a moment. That's when I spotted her. A frail old woman wandering in the yard. She looked lost, mumbling about her husband. My stomach twisted. Nobody lived there, but she seemed so real. A few nights later, we were called to the hospital. It was supposed to be busy, but when we arrived, the place was empty. No patients, just silence. I felt uneasy. I heard faint noises echoing through the hallways, but I didn't see anyone. My heart raced as I called for help, but only the silence answered back. The next strange call was about a missing dog. We drove into the dark woods, flashlights slicing through the night. I felt the air shift. Then I heard a child's laughter, soft and distant. I looked around but saw no one. My partner didn't hear it, so I brushed it off. But deep down, I knew something was off. Weeks went by and the calls started to feel connected. Each one left a mark on me. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like I was losing grip on reality. I tried to push it away, but the truth was creeping closer. Finally, one night we got a call to a farmhouse said to be abandoned. I barely made it to the door when I saw a figure in the window. It looked like an old man. I knocked softly, feeling the odd tension in the air. I heard that same child's laughter again, echoing back at me. My heart thumped loudly in my chest as I shouted, "Hello?" Silence. My breath caught. I turned to leave when the door suddenly swung open. My heart nearly stopped. Nobody was there. Just emptiness staring back at me. I stood frozen. I felt something pulling me back, the air thick with confusion. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Was it all in my head? Did I imagine the old man? The laughter? Panic started to rise in my throat. I looked around, searching for answers, but nothing made sense. The questions swirled in my mind. What was happening in this town? Why did I feel so haunted? I turned and ran to the ambulance, my hands trembling. My phone buzzed with the next call, but all I could think about was the door that had swung open for me. What had I stumbled into? I sat in the ambulance, gripping the steering wheel as my heart raced. The call that lit up my phone felt hollow, like a curse. After what I had just experienced, I wasn't sure I could face another unsettling situation. But duty called. I had to respond. "Come on," I muttered to myself. I flipped on the lights and siren and drove into the night. The road was winding, shadows creeping along with me. The dispatcher said it was a woman experiencing chest pains. She lived on the outskirts of town, close to where I'd just been. Arriving at her small, cluttered home, I felt the same chill wash over me. I stepped out, trying to shake the fear from my mind. The air was thick, and I wrapped my jacket tighter around me. As I approached the door, I noticed the curtains flaring slightly, as if someone were watching. I knocked hard, the sound echoing in the stillness. "Hello?" I called out. "We're here to help." Silence. Just the sound of my own breathing. I pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a dimly lit room filled with darkness. I stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the shadows. Dust motes floated in the air like lost spirits. "Ma'am?" I called. "Are you here?" There was a rustle in the other room and I flinched. "It's just us," I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. I stepped further in, my instincts telling me to be careful. The floorboards creaked beneath me. Then I saw her. A frail woman sat curled up in a sewing chair, her back to me. She wore a light shawl, but her hair was wild and unkempt. I approached cautiously. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I asked, my pulse pounding. She turned slowly. Her eyes were wide and glimmering, a look of pure terror etched across her face. "He's here," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You have to help me." "Who?" I asked, trying to keep the fear from creeping into my voice. "He's watching from the window," she said, shaking her head as if trying to escape a memory. I turned to the window, the hairs on my arms standing up. At first I saw nothing, just the quiet street shrouded in darkness. But then I spotted a figure, a man cloaked in shadow, standing under the streetlight. My stomach twisted. The same old man from the farmhouse loomed there, his outline unmistakable. I blinked, trying to dismiss it, but he didn't disappear. "Stay inside," I told the woman. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I moved to the door. "Please don't open it," she screamed, her voice rising to a panicked pitch. With every instinct screaming at me to run, I opened the door. The night air hit me like a cold wave, but the man was gone. Just the darkness and silence remained. I stepped back in, heart racing. "Where did he go?" I asked, confused and out of breath. "He always comes back," she whispered, "when the lights go out." Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered, then went out completely. The room plunged into darkness, and I felt a tightness in my chest. "What's happening?" I demanded, but in that moment, I heard the laughter again, the child's laughter echoing through the empty house. That laughter sent chills down my spine and stopped me in my tracks. I turned back to the woman, but she was gone. I gasped and took a step backward, the questions burning in my mind. Where had she gone? What had I stepped into? "Ma'am," I called out, but only silence answered me. Then, a sudden noise from behind made me jump. Something, or someone, was in the house with me. My breath quickened as I strained to listen. The house, once oppressive in its silence, now pulsed with a sense of presence. I twisted around, flashlight in hand, illuminating the corners of the room. Shadows danced like phantoms, and every creak of the floor seemed to echo ominously. I took a cautious step back, the door still ajar. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice breaking slightly. "Is someone there?" The words felt thin, fragile in the dark. I could almost hear my pulse pounding in my ears. Then came the sound again. A soft, deliberate shuffle, as if something was moving just out of sight. My skin prickled. I turned swiftly, scanning the room with frantic eyes. That laughter. It hung in the air like a forgotten ghost, floating in and out of time. "Ma'am," I shouted, the desperation creeping into my voice. What was happening? I had no answer. I reached for my radio, hoping to call for backup, but before I could, there was a sharp thump from the back of the house. My heart skipped. Whatever was in here wasn't going to wait much longer. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I had to find that woman. She couldn't have just vanished. I moved cautiously through the living room and into a narrow hallway. The dim light from my flashlight barely pierced the gloom. It felt like stepping deeper into a void. There were more noises now, faint whispers tugging at the edges of my awareness. I rounded a corner and another door loomed at the end of the hall. The door was closed, a darker patch of shadow against the wall. I approached it slowly, every instinct warning me to turn back. But I had to check. I reached for the doorknob, and just then the laughter rose again, now sharp and mocking. I flinched, about to recoil, when I caught a glimpse of movement just beyond the door. A small figure darted past, the shape neither solid nor defined. Instinct kicked in, and I yanked the door open. The room beyond was small and cluttered, filled with an overwhelming scent of mildew. Old toys lay scattered on the floor, their edges worn and cracked. And then I saw her, huddled in the far corner, the woman I had been searching for, her hands over her ears, shaking. "Ma'am," I called, rushing to her. "What's going on? We need to get you out of here." She looked up, and her expression struck me with fear as she pointed behind me. "He's coming," she gasped. I turned, a cold dread settling in my stomach. The shadows thickened, swirling around the room like smoke. Something was there, lurking just out of sight. My instincts shouted to run, but I couldn't leave her behind. "Stay close," I urged, gripping her arm as I pulled her up. Just then, the laughter erupted again, loud and piercing, filling the space with an almost palpable malice. The darkness seemed to close in. That's when I saw it. A shadowy figure loomed in the doorway, backlit by the faint glow of the streetlight outside. My blood ran cold. I had to make a choice, stay and confront it or run toward the door with her. I released her arm and shouted, "Run!" as I prepared to face whatever was watching us from the shadows. The moment I yelled "run," The atmosphere shifted. The shadow didn't move, but it felt like the air cracked with tension. I barely turned my back before adrenaline surged through my veins. I pulled the woman after me, her breath coming in short gasps beside me. We bolted down the narrow hallway and burst into the living room, where I skidded to a stop. "Out the front," I called, pointing through the open door. The night loomed outside, filled with a stillness that felt completely wrong. But just as we reached the threshold, the laughter came again, this time echoing through the house with a deep, menacing resonance. It seemed to seep into every crevice, bouncing off the walls as if mocking our escape. I hesitated, nerves pulling at me. "Keep moving," I shouted again, forcing myself to step outside. The chill hit me like a wave. I scanned the yard. The flickering light cast eerie shadows among the overgrown weeds. There was no sign of life except for the sound of our hurried footsteps. I turned back to her, trying to catch her eye. "Where's your car?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. I walked here. I thought I could find help." Her eyes darted toward the house, panic setting in. "We have to go back." "No," I said firmly. "We have to get away from here." But even as I said it, I felt the weight of dread. The longer we lingered, the more the darkness seemed alive, pushing against us, trying to drag us back inside. A low rumble shifted in the air behind us, and I could sense something building, rising like a tide. Suddenly the flashlight flickered and died. My heart sank as darkness enveloped us. I cursed under my breath. "I'll get it." Before I could finish, a whispering wind danced through the yard, pulling me back toward the house. I gripped the woman's arm. "Stay close. We need to move." Then, just as suddenly, the laughter returned, sharper and more vicious than before. I turned just in time to see the dark figure emerging from the house, fully formed now. It stepped into the streetlight, revealing a face twisted in a grin that sent ice through my veins. I started to back away, pulling the woman with me. "What the hell is that?" I whispered, feeling the panic rising again. "I don't know. I didn't see his face before," she cried. We were trapped. I could feel the weight of its gaze on us, and a chill ran through the air as if time itself had paused. Then, without warning, the figure lunged, moving faster than I could react. "Run!" I yelled again, my legs finally finding motion. We sprinted to the side of the house, searching for any means of escape. As we rounded the corner, I caught sight of something strange at the edge of the yard. A faint glow emanating from a small shed. There was a chance to hide, maybe to call for help. I turned to the woman, breathless. "In there, quickly!" She nodded, fear etched on her face, and we darted toward it. Just as we reached for the door, the laughter erupted again. But this time it was accompanied by something else, a deep, rumbling growl that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. Frozen, I glanced back at the figure, which loomed closer, ready to pounce. I pushed the door open and shoved us both inside, the chill creeping around us like hands closing in. As I slammed the door shut, sealing off the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of whatever horrors awaited us. The shed was cramped, nothing but a few wooden shelves and an old lawnmower left to gather dust. I paused to catch my breath, my ears straining to listen for any sounds outside. The laughter had faded, but I felt the weight of something lingering in the air. "Is it gone?" the woman whispered, clutching my arm tightly. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the fear that gripped me too. "I don't know," I admitted. I didn't want to admit how terrified I was. I had to appear strong for her sake. I took a step back and peered through a crack in the door. The night outside loomed dark and empty. The only sound that reached my ears was the distant rustle of leaves, but it felt wrong. Too quiet. I flicked on my phone's flashlight, illuminating the shed's dirty walls, searching for anything we could use as a weapon. That's when I noticed it. A small red toolbox sitting on one of the shelves. I grabbed it, feeling its weight in my hands. It wasn't much, but I felt better having something, anything I could use to defend us. "Do you have any idea what that thing is?" I asked the woman, turning back to face her. She shook her head, eyes darting to the door. "No, but it felt wrong, like it wanted us." I nodded. The chill crept deeper, settling in my bones. We need to get out of here, find a way to call for help. Just as I turned back to the door, the laughter rang out again, sharp and mocking. It was closer this time, echoing around the yard, a sinister reminder that we weren't safe. I pulled the toolbox closer, my heart racing faster. Should we try to make a run for it? She suggested, her voice trembling. Maybe it's waiting for us to step outside. I frowned, glancing around the shed for an alternate exit. I pressed my ear against the door, listening intently. Then a soft thump reverberated through the shed, vibrating the floor. I whipped around, startled by the sound. What was that? I don't know, she breathed, her face pale. Before I could respond, a sudden crash rattled the door, causing both of us to jump. I felt my stomach drop. The figure from before had found us. We have to move now, I urged, adrenaline kicking in again. I slammed my foot on the toolbox, flipping it open. Tools scattered everywhere, but none caught my eye. Just then, something silver glinted in the moonlight that filtered through a small window, a rusty crowbar. Get this, I yelled, grabbing it and handing it to her. I can't, she said, shaking her head. What if it gets in here? Then we'll have to fight just in case, I insisted, feeling the pressure swell in my chest. I stepped back towards the door, peeking through the crack again. The night was still, but that would soon change. The laughter crescendoed just outside, and the air hummed with a sense of danger. I felt the crowbar slip through my fingers. This isn't good, I murmured, trying not to panic. But then out of the corner of my eye, I caught something moving in the shadows beyond the window. It was low to the ground, and it moved differently, slinking rather than walking. That's when I saw it, I whispered. Fear rushed through me as it crept closer, revealing a pair of glowing eyes. Something's out there, I said, feeling my heart race. And it's not just him. The creature stepped out of the shadows, its form almost too dark to distinguish against the night. I could see it now, thin and wiry with limbs that twisted at unnatural angles. The eyes glowed with an eerie light, fixating on us. I staggered back, nearly losing my grip on the crowbar. What is that? The woman stammered, her voice barely more than a whisper. I swallowed hard, every instinct telling me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I don't know. The creature hovered near the shed, its sharp, pointed teeth glinting as it hissed softly. It didn't seem human. It felt like a nightmare brought to life. Panic surged inside me, battling with the need to protect the woman beside me. Do you hear that? I strained to listen. The laughter had faded, replaced by a low, guttural sound that sent shivers crawling up my spine. It was a sound that shouldn't exist outside the realm of horror films. Maybe we can sneak out the back, I suggested, even though I felt hollow. The fear of what was outside was nearly paralyzing. I darted my gaze to the tiny back window. Considering the size of the creature, it wasn't a guarantee it hadn't already spotted us. We have to move quietly. She nodded, swallowing hard, but I could see she trembled. I held the crowbar tightly, contemplating whether I could actually use it if it came to that. With a deep breath, I motioned for her to follow me to the back of the shed. We crept along the side, my heart hammering in my chest. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. I glanced back at her, her expression a mix of fear and determination. Then everything went dark. The shed's single bulb flickered and failed, plunging us into near-complete darkness. No, 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 I muttered, fumbling to turn on my phone's flashlight. The dim beam flickered to life just as I heard a loud thud resonate nearby. Did it come in? She gasped, her eyes wide in the dark. Stay close, I urged, shining the light toward the door. The flashlight caught a glimpse of movement outside. The thing was still there, pacing back and forth just at the threshold. It seemed to be toying with us, enjoying our fear. Suddenly the door burst open with a force that rattled the shed. Run, I shouted, lunging toward the back window. I didn't know if we'd make it out, but we had to try. The woman followed me, gaining speed as we shoved ourselves through the narrow space. I felt jagged edges against my skin as I squeezed through, panic fueling my movements. Just as I hit the ground outside, I turned to see if she made it, but she was stuck, trapped between the window and the edge of the shed. The creature was close, its breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. "Help me!" she cried, desperation filling her voice. I grabbed her hand, pulling with all my strength, but just as she broke free, a shadow lunged forward. The last thing I saw was that flash of teeth before everything vanished in an explosion of darkness and terror. I stumbled backward, the world spinning as I tried to make sense of what just happened. The panic surged through me, making it hard to breathe. My heart pounded in my ears as I scanned the darkness around me, searching for any sign of the woman. "Where are you?" I called, my voice hoarse. No response, just the chilling silence that filled the air, heavy and suffocating. I cursed myself for not being faster, for not being able to protect her. I turned, peeling myself away from where I'd fallen. The shed loomed behind me like a dark sentinel. Was the creature still nearby? I had to move, had to find her. Peering into the shadows, I noticed a faint glimmer. It was a trail of sparks a few feet ahead. I approached cautiously, the crowbar gripped tightly in my hand. The gleam came from a piece of metal in the grass, partially buried. As I bent down, memories replayed in my mind. Those strange stories the paramedics shared during night shifts, tales of things lurking in the dark. I never believed them. It felt too far-fetched. But here I was, caught in an unspeakable nightmare. I picked up the piece of metal, realizing it was part of the shed's torn-off door. It felt heavy in my hand, a reminder of how close danger had been. I pressed on. "She has to be somewhere," I whispered, though I fought against a growing sense of dread. I moved toward the forest that bordered the clearing, the shadows swallowing me whole. My flashlight beam flickered ahead, illuminating a path through the trees. Just then, a low growl reverberated from behind me, freezing me in place. It wasn't coming from the shed. "Stay back," I warned, my voice quivering. I turned slowly, scanning for the source of the sound. Then something darted past, a blur in the shadows. In an instinctive reaction, I swung the crowbar at the dark shape, but it was too quick. I felt a rush of air against my cheek as it dodged me, and before I could process it, it lunged toward me again. This time, I caught a glimpse of its face, a grotesque mask of malice, and I staggered back, colliding with a tree. In that moment, a scream erupted in the distance. The woman. "Help!" she cried, echoing through the trees. That instinct to protect her surged again. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. Using the tree for support, I sprinted toward the sound of her voice. The growl followed, closer now. I dodged branches, feeling the chill of night wash over me. I had to reach her before it did. Then I stumbled into a clearing, and there she was, backed against a tree, eyes wide with fright. But she wasn't alone. The creature loomed beside her, its jagged teeth ready to strike. "Get away from her," I yelled, raising the crowbar, adrenaline coursing through me. But just as I stepped forward, it turned its gaze toward me, its glowing eyes flashing with hunger. That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for her life. I was fighting for my own. I could sense it. This creature wanted more than prey. It wanted a harrowing game to play. I didn't have time to think. I lunged forward, the crowbar swinging. The creature hissed, baring its teeth like a wolf ready to attack. I could feel the heat of its breath, the stench of decay mixing with the damp earth. The woman screamed again, her plea pulling me back from the depths of fear. "Run!" I shouted at her. "Get out of here!" But she didn't move. She was frozen, her eyes locked on the creature. It swiped towards me, claws glinting in the moonlight. I ducked, narrowly avoiding its attack. I swung again, this time connecting with its side. The creature howled, but it didn't retreat. It just turned, eyes narrowing at me as it shook off the impact. I had to act fast, my mind raced. "What do you want?" I yelled, hoping to somehow reason with this monster. There was no answer, just the growl that rumbled deep within its chest, a sound that made my blood run cold. In a moment of desperation, I glanced back at the woman. "Get something to defend yourself," I urged, trying to buy us time. She looked around, her trembling hands searching for anything. Then I remembered the shed. Something could be inside it, something bigger than just the door I found. "The shed," I yelled, pointing. "There might be tools or something inside." Still holding its gaze, I edged closer to her, ready to block its next attack. But the creature was clever. It shifted, circling us like a predator, forcing me to keep my eyes on it. "Go!" I yelled again. "Now!" Finally, she broke free from her daze. She turned and ran toward the shed, ducking through the trees. I stayed planted, the crowbar raised as I watched the creature pivot and follow her. That would be its mistake. With a surge of adrenaline, I sprinted after them. I didn't care about my fear anymore. It was drowned out by my instinct to protect her. We both reached the shed at the same time. I smashed the door open while keeping my eyes on the creature, which was now prowling towards us. Inside, the beam from my flashlight caught sight of tools lining the walls. Saws, hammers, and old cans. I grabbed a rusty axe, its weight comforting in my hands. I could hear the creature's growl escalate behind me, eager for another chance at terror. "Get behind me!" I shouted, and as she stumbled into the shed, I swung the door shut, locking it just in time. The pounding began, fists slamming against the wood, splinters falling. I could feel the vibrations from its blows echoing in my chest. "What do we do?" she whimpered, eyes wide with dread as she pressed against the wall, struggling to catch her breath. "Find something else. We need to fight," I replied, scanning the cluttered space. But even as I said that, doubt gnawed at me. I could hear the creature outside, fury radiating with every hit. Then, as if sensing our panic, it stopped. The silence stretched between us, heavy and unsettling. I turned to her, searching for any sign of hope. "Do you have a plan?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, the growl returned, now accompanied by something else. A low, deep rumble, vibrating through the ground. That's when I saw it. Shadows were moving around us, slipping through the cracks of the shed. More than one creature. And then everything went dark. I stumbled as darkness sank in. The air was thick, a weight pressing down on my chest. I blinked hard, trying to adjust my eyes, but there was nothing, just shadows closing in. "Are you okay?" I heard her voice, trembling with fear. I couldn't see her anymore. My heart raced, the sound of it pounding like a drum in my ears. "I'm fine," I whispered back, though nothing felt fine. My fingers tightened around the axe, the cool metal grounding me even as panic clawed at my insides. The silence was disturbed by scratching sounds outside. Claws scraping against wood, relentless and unnerving. Then it came again, the growl, now joined by an echoing chorus. More than one creature. "What are they?" she asked, the desperation in her tone pulling at my resolve. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her we could handle this, but I didn't have the words. What were we dealing with? I heard a thud, a heavy impact against the shed. My grip on the axe tightened, knuckles white. "We need to think," I said, forcing some determination into my voice. "We can't just stay here. Where do we go? If we can get to the other side of this shed, we might be able to slip away into the trees," I suggested, trying to catch my breath. "If the door is sturdy enough, we can distract them and make a break for it." A renewed growl erupted from outside, sharper and filled with rage. I swallowed hard. The creatures were circling, waiting for a moment of weakness. I shuffled closer to the walls, straining to hear any sign of weakness in their noise. "On three, we push the door open," I said, glancing at the splintered wood. I focused on the threshold, prioritizing our escape over the horror beyond it. 1, 2, 3. We pushed together, but the door wouldn't budge. The pounding intensified, splintering the wood more with each strike. I could feel the panic building in me again. "Don't give up. They're trying to scare us." I tried to sound convincing. I needed her to keep it together. Suddenly the door creaked open just enough for a small sliver of moonlight to slice through. My heart skipped. Were they inside? "Go," I shouted, pulling her closer to me. I thrust the axe towards the door, opening it just a little wider, but my next breath froze in my throat. Two glowing eyes peered back at me. I kicked with all my strength, making contact. The creature shrieked, a horrible scream that shattered the stillness. It stumbled but quickly regained its footing, and I knew it wouldn't take long for the others to react. "Now!" I yelled, shoving the door open fully. We both bolted outside, heartbeats synchronizing with the pounding in our ears. But the moment of relief was brief. Shadows danced menacingly at the edge of my vision. I couldn't ignore them anymore. That's when I felt paws brush against my ankle, hot breath brushing against my skin. A new threat. It was close, too close. "Run!" I screamed, adrenaline surging as I sprinted into the trees, unsure of where they would lead. Desperate to escape, I knew it was only the beginning. There was more out there than just fur and teeth. The darkness pressed around us as we raced deeper into the woods, sprinting past trees that seemed to close in like the jaws of a looming beast. I could hear the creature's growls echoing behind us, a relentless reminder of the terror we were fleeing. To my left, the woman stumbled, caught by a gnarled root. "Go!" I shouted back, heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't afford to slow down, not now. With every footfall, I could feel the ground shifting beneath us, the woods transforming from sanctuary to prison. It was as if they held secrets that twisted and morphed. Pale branches reached out like skeletal hands. Tangled undergrowth clawed at our legs. I had no idea where we were headed. I only knew we had to keep moving. "Over here!" I shouted after glancing over my shoulder. She scrambled up, brushing dirt from her clothes as we veered toward a clearing. Moonlight spilled through an opening in the trees, illuminating a small abandoned cottage. "Should we go in?" She breathed, the fear still alive in her voice. "This might be safer than the woods," I replied, but doubts churned in my mind. The outside could be deceptive. Who knew what shadows lingered within? I glanced back. The shadows were close, the growls sharper, angrier. We dashed for the door, pushing it open with a creak that echoed through the empty room. Dust motes swirled like lost souls in the air, illuminated by the dim light of moonlight filtering through shattered windows. The air smelled stale, but it was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside, crowbar still gripped tightly, scanning the shadows. The woman followed, stepping just inside the threshold. "We should barricade the door," I suggested. "Right," she agreed, her voice steadying as she searched the space. I quickly found a rickety chair, propping it against the door. The sound of shuffling outside made my heart skip. "Is it gone?" she whispered, eyes darting to the corners of the room. "I don't know," I replied, edging closer to the window to peer outside. The night was unnaturally still. The creatures seemingly paused at the tree line, as if waiting for a signal. "Maybe they're gone," she began. But as she spoke, a low growl rumbled from outside, followed by that dreadful laughter once more. They hadn't left. "Stay low," I whispered, crouching down and hoping she would follow. "If they catch our scent, they might come in." I could feel a bead of sweat roll down my neck as doubt resumed its grip on me. "We need to find another way out." We quietly searched the cottage, maneuvering through dark rooms filled with shattered furniture and forgotten relics of a lifelong past. Moments stretched into an eternity, each creak of the floorboards making us both jump. "Nothing here," she said finally, a quiver creeping into her voice. With a sudden crash, something smashed into the side of the house. "They're trying to get in," I hissed, panic rising anew. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her deeper into the cottage, frantically searching for a back exit. The deeper we went, the more the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick, oppressive, like a weight threatening to crush us against the floorboards. And then we found it. A narrow door at the back, hidden behind a disheveled curtain. It looked rotted, all but forgotten. "This could lead outside," I said, hope sparking in my chest. "Let's go," she exclaimed, and I flung the door open, ready for whatever awaited us. It wasn't a way out, but a small enclosed cellar, hidden from the outside world. "No, no, no," I mouthed, dread flooding me. But it was too late. The shadows outside had heard us. They crawled closer as I tugged her into the dark space, slamming the door behind us just as scraping sounds erupted from above. Darkness engulfed us. My flashlight flickered weakly against the damp walls, illuminating old jars and forgotten memories. I could hardly breathe as the echoes of the outside world faded. The growls and laughter were muted, as if muffled by layers of dirt and despair. "What now?" she whispered, the tremor in her voice unmistakable. I didn't have an answer. "We wait," I stated, my heart racing at the thought. As we crouched in the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real horror was not just outside, but here with us. A sinister presence settled into the corners of my mind, an unease deepened by the half-forgotten memories that buzzed around us. I shifted uneasily as my eyes adjusted to the gloom. I wanted to tell her that we'd make it out, that we'd find a way back to the safe streets we once knew. But outside, the laughter changed to a chorus, growing louder, echoing through the night like a ritual chant. And I realized just how many shadows hadn't left us, what we had stumbled into. In that darkness, the silence suffocated. I squeezed her hand tightly, trying to conceal my fear as we waited for a break in the chaos outside. The thing we ran from wasn't just lurking around the corner. It felt latched onto the folds of our being, a malevolent spirit of the night that haunted us both. It changed how I saw things. We were no longer paramedics. We were prey, caught in a world where the line between reality and nightmare had blurred beyond recognition. I could still hear the echoes of laughter, the rumbling growl closing in, and as much as I wanted to believe we would escape, a question lingered in my mind. If we got out, would we ever truly be free? As shadows danced around our fragile sanctuary, I held on tight.